had never heard of Great-Aunt Cordelia until the lawyer called on that gray Tuesday morning in September. The phone rang while I was rushing to get ready for work, and I almost didn't answer the unknown number. "Miss Chen, this is Harold Hartwell from Hartwell and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Cordelia Blackwood. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number," I said, balancing the phone between my shoulder and ear while searching for my other shoe. "Are you Maya Chen, daughter of Linda Chen, formerly Linda Blackwood?" I paused. "Yes, that's me." "Then I have the right number. Your great-aunt Cordelia passed away last month, and you've been named as the sole beneficiary of her estate." The rest of the conversation felt surreal. A distant relative on my mother's side, someone I'd never even heard mentioned, had left me an entire Victorian mansion in the countryside, complete with all its contents, and a substantial trust fund for maintenance. All I had to do was take possession and maintain the property according to her specifications. "There's just one condition," Mr. Hartwell explained when we met at his office later that week. He was a thin, nervous man who kept adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses and checking his watch. "You must follow the house management guidelines precisely. Your aunt was very particular about the property's care." He handed me an ornate leather journal along with a heavy ring of brass keys. The journal was bound in deep burgundy leather with brass corners, and it felt ancient in my hands. The weight of it was surprising, far heavier than it should have been for its size. "Everything you need to know is in there," he said, standing abruptly, as if eager to end our meeting. "I do hope you'll be happy there, Miss Chen." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I was too excited to dwell on it. After years of struggling to make rent on my tiny city apartment, I was suddenly the owner of a mansion. The drive to Blackwood Manor took 3 hours through increasingly rural countryside. The GPS had trouble with the final stretch, a winding dirt road that seemed to exist in the gaps between other roads. Ancient oak trees formed a canopy overhead, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the afternoon sun. When the mansion finally came into view, I had to pull over just to take it in. It was magnificent and terrible all at once, a Gothic revival masterpiece that seemed to have grown from the landscape itself. 3 stories of dark stone rose from perfectly manicured gardens, with towers and turrets reaching towards storm clouds that hadn't been there moments before. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their stone faces worn smooth by decades of weather, but somehow still menacing. The front door was massive, carved from dark wood, and set with iron hinges that looked medieval. As I approached with my suitcases, I noticed the brass nameplate. Blackwood Manor, Est 1847. The key turned easily in the lock, as if the house had been waiting for me. Inside, my breath caught in my throat. The foyer was larger than my entire apartment, with a crystal chandelier hanging from a ceiling painted with celestial scenes. A grand staircase curved upward, its banister carved with intricate vines and flowers. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon light, streaming through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across Persian rugs and antique furniture. I spent the first hour just wandering room by room, trying to comprehend that all of this was mine. The parlor with its velvet-covered furniture and marble fireplace, the library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a rolling ladder, the dining room with a table that could seat 20, the kitchen, surprisingly modern despite the house's age, with gleaming copper pots hanging from hooks and an enormous cast-iron stove. It was in the kitchen that I finally opened the journal. I made myself a cup of tea using leaves I found in an ornate tin, and settled at the breakfast nook to read my inheritance's management guidelines. Rules for the proper management of Blackwood Manor, written by Cordelia Blackwood, for the safety and well-being of all inhabitants. Rule 1 furniture may only be moved on Tuesdays and only during daylight hours. Any furniture moved on other days or after sunset will be returned to its original position by morning, and the resident will forfeit 1 day of personal history. Rule 2 all mirrors must be covered with black cloth between 3:00-4:00 a.m. The cloths are kept in the linen closet on the second floor. Failure to cover the mirrors during this hour will result in seeing things that should not be seen. Rule 3 the basement door requires exactly 3 knocks, followed by a 30-second wait before entering. Do not enter if you hear anything responding to your knocks. If something responds, leave the house immediately and do not return for 24 hours. Rule 4 never eat in the dining room alone. The house does not approve of solitary dining in formal spaces. If you must eat alone, use the kitchen or parlor. Rule 5 if you hear piano music, do not investigate. Simply close your eyes and count to 200. The music will stop when you finish counting. Do not open your eyes until the silence has lasted for at least 1 full minute. Rule 6 the grandfather clock must chime 13 times at midnight. If it doesn't, wind it immediately. A clock that fails to chime 13 times at midnight indicates that time is moving incorrectly within the house. Rule 7 never sleep in the same room twice in 1 week. The house grows attached to sleeping occupants and may attempt to keep them in dreams permanently. Rule 8 if the wallpaper begins bleeding, apologize to it sincerely. The house is wounded by carelessness and responds to genuine contrition. Rule 9 do not look directly at your reflection after 11 p.m. Your reflection may be someone else entirely. Rule 10 if you hear your own voice calling from the basement, do not answer. That is not you anymore. I read through the rules twice, then laughed out loud. Rich people and their eccentricities, I thought. Probably just the paranoid delusions of an old woman who lived alone too long. Basement voices and bleeding wallpaper. Mirrors that needed to be covered. It all sounded like the plot of a bad horror movie. I closed the journal and set it aside, more interested in exploring my incredible inheritance. The house was full of wonders. I found a conservatory filled with exotic plants, their leaves glistening with moisture despite no visible watering system. There was a music room with a grand piano that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of ebony. Its surface so polished I could see my reflection in it. The master bedroom was a suite larger than most houses, with a four-poster bed draped in midnight blue velvet and windows that looked out over gardens that seemed to stretch to the horizon. That first night, I fell asleep in the master bed feeling like I'd won the lottery. I woke to my alarm at 7 a.m. Wednesday morning, refreshed and excited to continue exploring. After breakfast, I decided to rearrange the parlor to better suit my tastes. The antique armchair was positioned awkwardly in the corner, and it would look perfect by the large window where I could read in the afternoon sun. I remembered the silly rule about only moving furniture on Tuesdays, but I laughed it off. What was the worst that could happen? Would the ghost of Great-Aunt Cordelia come to scold me? The chair was heavier than it looked, and I had to put my full weight into dragging it across the Persian rug. Once positioned by the window, though, it was perfect. The afternoon light would be ideal for reading, and I'd have a beautiful view of the gardens. I spent the rest of Wednesday exploring more rooms, finding treasures in every corner. A music box that played a haunting melody I couldn't identify. A collection of books bound in leather so soft it felt like silk. Paintings that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle from which I viewed them. That evening, I cooked dinner in the spacious kitchen and ate at the breakfast nook, perfectly content with my new life. I went to bed early, exhausted from all the exploring, but happier than I'd been in years. Thursday morning brought the first sign that something was wrong. I woke with a strange feeling of disorientation, as if I'd forgotten something important. I lay in bed trying to identify what was bothering me, and then it hit me. I couldn't remember my college roommate's name. This was disturbing because Jessica had been my best friend. We'd shared a dorm room for 3 years, been each other's maids of honor, stayed in touch constantly after graduation. But now, trying to summon her name, I came up with nothing. I could picture her clearly, long dark hair always in a messy bun, infectious laugh, the way she'd steal my hoodies and never return them. But her name was completely gone. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts. No Jessica. I searched my photos, thousands of pictures from college, graduation, post-graduation trips. In every photo where I remembered Jessica being beside me, I was alone, standing by myself in front of landmarks, sitting alone at restaurant tables for two lone figure in group photos where I clearly remembered being part of a pair. My heart was racing now. I pulled up Facebook, searched for Jessica with every last name I could think of. Nothing. No mutual friends. No tagged photos. No messages in my inbox. I checked Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, every social media platform I could think of. It was as if Jessica had never existed, but I remembered her. I remembered everything about her major in art history, the way she bit her lip when concentrating, how she always ordered extra cheese on her pizza. I remembered her parents visiting, helping us move into the apartment we'd shared senior year. I remembered crying when she moved across the country for graduate school. I ran downstairs and grabbed the journal, my hands trembling as I flipped through the pages. There, at the bottom of the first page in handwriting that wasn't Cordelia's spidery script, was a note I hadn't seen before. Each broken rule costs a day. The house remembers everything you forget. My blood went cold. I read Rule 1 again. Furniture may only be moved on Tuesdays and only during daylight hours. Any furniture moved on other days or after sunset will be returned to its original position by morning, and the resident will forfeit 1 day of personal history. I had moved the chair on Wednesday, and now Jessica, 1 full day of my personal history, was gone. I ran to the parlor. The armchair sat in its original corner position, as if it had never been moved. For the next week, I followed every rule in the journal with religious devotion. I covered all the mirrors each night between 3 and 4 a.m., using the black cloths I found neatly folded in the second-floor linen closet. The first time I did this, my hands shook as I draped the dark fabric over each reflective surface. Something about covering my own reflection felt profoundly wrong, as if I was erasing myself from existence 1 hour at a time. I knocked 3 times on the basement door and waited 30 seconds before entering to retrieve some wine from what appeared to be an extensive cellar. The basement was vast and cold, with stone walls that wept moisture and wine racks that disappeared into darkness. I never lingered down there longer than necessary. I ate all my meals in the kitchen or parlor, never alone in the dining room. On the few occasions when I considered breaking this rule, the dining room was so beautiful, with its crystal chandelier and mahogany table. I noticed that the portrait hanging above the fireplace seemed to follow me with its eyes, the painted woman's expression growing stern and disapproving. When I heard faint piano music on Friday evening, I closed my eyes and counted to 200, my heart pounding the entire time. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, and every instinct told me to follow it to its source. But I forced myself to remain still, counting slowly and deliberately until the music faded away. The grandfather clock in the main hall chimed 13 times every night at midnight, something that should have been mechanically impossible. But I had learned not to question the impossible things in this house. The 13th chime always made my skin crawl, a sound that seemed to echo from somewhere deeper than the clock's mechanism. I slept in a different room each night, rotating between the master bedroom, 2 guest rooms, a small study with a daybed, and even the conservatory on one particularly warm evening. Each room had its own character, its own feeling, and I began to understand why the house might grow attached to sleeping occupants. There was something seductive about the way each space seemed to mold itself to my presence. The way the beds always felt perfectly comfortable. The way the temperature was always exactly right. On Tuesday of my 2nd week, I carefully moved a small side table in the parlor during daylight hours, following Rule 1 exactly. Nothing happened. My memories stayed intact, though I found myself checking them obsessively, counting friends, recalling conversations, making sure nothing else had been stolen from my past. But the house seemed restless that night. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room, slow and deliberate. When I checked, the hallway was empty, but the carpet showed indentations where someone had recently walked. Doors that I'd closed stood open. The temperature dropped suddenly in random rooms, my breath visible in small puffs of vapor that dissipated as quickly as they appeared. Most unsettling of all, I began to find additions to the journal. Not new rules, but notes scrawled in the margins, and at the bottom of pages, warnings and observations in handwriting that definitely wasn't Cordelia's careful script. Next to Rule 2, someone had written, "The things in the mirrors aren't reflections. They're watching." Below Rule 5, "The piano music is beautiful until you see who's playing. Don't look. Don't ever look." By Rule 7, "I tried sleeping in the attic once. Woke up 3 days later. Don't remember those 3 days at all." Most chilling was the note next to Rule 10. "It sounds exactly like you. It knows things only you should know." It's very convincing. The handwriting in these notes varied, sometimes shaky with fear, other times bold and confident, occasionally barely legible scratches. I began to understand that other people had lived here, other inheritors who had discovered additional terrors beyond Cordelia's original 10 rules. But where were they now? On my 3rd Thursday in the house, I found my answer. I was exploring the library when I discovered a section I hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a bookshelf that had apparently moved on its own. The hidden alcove contained dozens of journals, each similar to the one Cordelia had left me, but in different states of decay. Some were water damaged, others had pages torn out, and a few were bound with what looked like iron wire, as if someone had tried to keep them shut. I opened the newest looking journal and immediately recognized the handwriting from the marginal notes in my own book. The name on the first page was Robert Blackwood, 1987. I inherited Blackwood Manor from my Aunt Cordelia, who inherited it from her sister Margaret, who inherited it from their cousin Edmund. The family tree is a lie. We're not related at all. The house chooses people who are alone, who have no one who will miss them when they disappear. I've been here for 6 months now. I follow the rules perfectly, but it doesn't matter. The house takes what it wants anyway. It took my memories of Sarah last week, 2 years of dating gone. Took my childhood friend Tom the week before. Sometimes I wake up and can't remember my own last name. The house isn't just stealing random days. It's carefully selecting which memories to erase, keeping me functional, but increasingly isolated. It's editing my life to make me believe I've always been alone, that I have nowhere else to go. I've started writing everything down, but even that doesn't help. Sometimes I find entries in my own handwriting that I don't remember making. Sometimes the entries contradict each other. The house can make me write things, make me believe things that aren't true. If someone else finds this, know that the rules are just the beginning. Following them perfectly won't save you. The house always wins. I flipped through more pages, finding increasingly desperate entries. Day 200, tried to call my sister. The number doesn't exist. Checked online, she's not there. No birth certificate, no social media, nothing. But I remember her. I remember her wedding, her kids, Sunday dinners at her house. How can someone be so completely erased? Day 256. Found a photo album I don't remember owning. It's full of pictures of me with people I don't recognize. Happy pictures, birthdays, vacations, graduations. But I can't remember any of these people's names or how I knew them. Did I have a family? Did I have friends? The house is showing me what it's taken, taunting me with ghosts. Day 289. I think I had a wife. I found a wedding ring in my pocket that fits perfectly, but I can't remember getting married. There's an indentation on my finger where a ring should be, but no memory of wearing one. Sometimes I wake up reaching for someone who isn't there. The final entry was barely legible, written in what looked like a shaking hand. Day 312. Can't remember my own name anymore. The house calls me different things each day. Sometimes I answer to all of them. I exist only in this moment, this sentence I'm writing. Tomorrow, I probably won't remember writing this. The house has almost everything now. Soon, I'll be nothing but a ghost in its walls. Another voice calling from the basement, trying to warn the next victim. Don't trust your memories. Don't trust your journals. Don't trust yourself. The house lies about everything, including who you are. I dropped the journal, my hands shaking. I grabbed another one, this one labeled Margaret Blackwood, 1952. The entries were similar, the same progression from confusion to horror, to desperate attempts at documentation, to the slow dissolution of identity. Margaret had lasted 8 months before her entries became incoherent. Another journal, Edmund Blackwood, 1923, showed the same pattern. So did the ones labeled Catherine Blackwood, 1894. and Thomas Blackwood, 1856. Dozens of journals spanning over a century. Dozens of people who had inherited Blackwood Manor, all sharing the same surname that wasn't really theirs, all following the same path from hope to terror to oblivion. At the bottom of the alcove, I found the oldest journal, its leather cover cracked and faded. The first page was dated 1847. The same year, the brass nameplate outside said the manor was established. I built this house with my own hands. The first entry read, I designed every room, carved every detail, placed every stone. I thought I was creating a sanctuary, a place where I could live peacefully after the horrors of the war. But something went wrong. The house became more than I intended. It grew hungry. It began to demand things, first small sacrifices, then larger ones. It wanted memories, experiences, the essence of what makes a person human. I tried to leave, but it wouldn't let me. I tried to destroy it, but it turned my own hands against me. I became its first prisoner, and when I died, it kept my spirit to help it hunt for others. The rules I've written aren't meant to protect the people who come after me. They're meant to feed the house slowly, to keep its victims alive long enough to provide maximum nourishment. Each broken rule gives it a taste, makes it stronger. I am sorry for what I've created. I am sorry for what it will do to you. But I am no longer strong enough to fight it. I can only warn you. The house doesn't want to kill you. It wants to make you forget you ever existed, to erase you so completely that even you won't remember who you were. And then it will call someone else, wearing your name and your face, to continue the cycle. Josiah Blackwood, Architect of Damnation. I stared at the page until the words blurred. The house wasn't just stealing memories, it was stealing entire identities, wearing them like masks to lure new victims. How many of the Blackwoods had been real family members, and how many had been the house itself, wearing stolen faces? I thought about Mr. Hartwell, the nervous lawyer who had seemed so eager to end our meeting. Had he been real, or just another puppet of the house? I was so absorbed in the journal that I didn't notice the temperature dropping until my breath began to fog. The alcove was suddenly freezing, and frost was forming on the windows, despite the warm October day outside. Behind me, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze, the slow, deliberate footsteps of someone descending the library ladder. But I was alone in the room. I had been alone when I discovered the hidden alcove. I turned around slowly, dreading what I might see. A woman stood at the bottom of the ladder, her back to me. She wore a dress that might have been fashionable in the 1950s, and her dark hair was perfectly styled in victory rolls. She turned around, and I saw my own face looking back at me, but different. Older, with lines of exhaustion and terror that I didn't yet have. "You're reading my journal," she said, and her voice was my voice, but hollow, echoing as if it came from the bottom of a well. "I'm Margaret." I was you once, before the house took everything. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. You think you can fight it, Margaret continued, taking a step closer. You think you can be smarter, more careful, find some loophole in the rules. I thought the same thing. We all did. You're not real, I managed to whisper. She smiled, and it was the saddest expression I'd ever seen. None of us are real anymore. We're just echoes, memories the house keeps as trophies. But we can still warn you, while you still remember who you are. How do I stop it? You can't. She was close enough now that I could see the tears on her cheeks. But you can choose how much of yourself to give up. Some of us fought until the very end, clinging to every scrap of identity until the house tore it away piece by piece. Others surrendered early, hoping it would be gentler. There has to be a way out. Margaret shook her head. The only way out is to never come in. But you're here now, and the house won't let you leave. It's already started, hasn't it? You've already lost someone. I thought of Jessica, the friend who had never existed, whose absence felt like a wound in my chest. Jessica, I said. For me, it was my husband, Margaret said. Charles. We were married for 3 years, but now I can barely remember his face. The house took our wedding day first, then our honeymoon, then the day we met. It saved his death for last, took away the grief, but left the emptiness. Why are you telling me this? Because someone has to bear witness. Someone has to remember that we existed, even if it's only for a little while. She was fading now, becoming translucent. The house will take this conversation from you eventually, but maybe you'll find this journal again. Maybe you'll write your own warnings for the next victim. Wait, I called out, but she was already gone. The alcove was empty except for the scattered journals and the lingering scent of roses, the smell of a funeral parlor. I gathered up the journals, determined to study them all, to find some pattern or weakness that the previous victims had missed. But as I carried them back to my room, I noticed that some of them were becoming lighter in my arms. When I looked down, pages were disappearing, text fading away as if written in vanishing ink. By the time I reached my room, I was carrying only my original journal and one other, a thin notebook with my own name, written on the cover in my own handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands and found pages covered with my own notes, written in a desperate scrawl. Day 1 inherited the house. The rules seemed crazy, but harmless. Day 3 broke rule 1. Lost Jessica. She was real. I know she was real. Day 12 tried to leave. Car won't start. Phone won't connect to outside numbers. The house won't let me go. Day 18 found the hidden journals. Margaret appeared to me, or I'm hallucinating. Either way, the situation is worse than I thought. Day 25, memory gaps getting worse. Sometimes I find meals I don't remember cooking, clothes I don't remember putting on. How much time am I losing? Day 34, wallpaper in the parlor started bleeding yesterday. apologized to it like Rule 8 says. It stopped bleeding, but now it whispers at night. Day 41. Slept in the master bedroom 3 nights in a row because I forgot about Rule 7. Woke up on the 4th day with no memory of the previous 3. Found bite marks on my arms that I don't remember getting. Day 50. The mirror thing is getting worse. Covered them last night at 3 a.m. like always, but when I uncovered them at 4, my reflection was still there underneath the cloth, smiling at me. I flipped through more pages, my horror growing. Day 67. Heard piano music and counted to 200 like Rule 5 says. But this time when I opened my eyes, I was in the music room standing in front of the piano. My hands were on the keys. I was the one playing. Day 78. Tried to call for help using the landline. Thought I was calling 911, but my own voice answered. Had a full conversation with myself for 20 minutes before I realized what was happening. Day 89. The grandfather clock didn't chime 13 times last night. Wounded immediately like Rule 6 says. When it started working again, it was somehow 3 days later. I've lost 3 entire days, and I don't know how. Day 95. Found a letter addressed to me in the mail slot. It was from me, but postmarked from 3 weeks ago, a week before I supposedly arrived at the house. The letter welcomed me to Blackwood Manor and hoped I would enjoy my stay. I don't remember writing it. The entries became increasingly frantic and disjointed. Day 102. Who is Maya Chen? I keep finding this name written everywhere, but I can't remember who she is. Is that me? Was that me? Day 105. Something is calling from the basement. It sounds like my voice, but it knows things I don't remember. It says it wants to show me something important. Day 108. Looked in the bathroom mirror after 11 p.m. Broke Rule 9. My reflection looked back and mouthed the words, "Help me." Then it pressed its hands against the glass from the inside and started bleeding. Day 112. Can't remember my name anymore. The house keeps calling me different things. Sometimes I answer to all of them. Started signing these entries as current resident because I don't know what else to call myself. The final entries were barely legible. Day, time isn't working right. Sometimes I write an entry, and when I look back, it's dated months ago. Sometimes I wake up and my handwriting has changed. Am I still me, or am I someone else wearing my memories? Day, found this journal in my room, but don't remember writing it. The handwriting looks like mine, but different. Older, more desperate. How many times have I written this same story? Day, if you're reading this and the handwriting looks familiar, you're me. You're just a few days behind. The house is making you forget and discover everything again and again. It feeds on the fear of discovery, so it lets you figure out the truth just enough times to keep the terror fresh. Day, don't trust your memories. Don't trust your journals. Don't trust yourself. I don't think I'm the first me to write this warning. I don't think I'll be the last. The notebook ended there, but as I watched, new words began to appear on the final page, written in real time by an invisible hand. You're reading this now, aren't you? Recognizing your own handwriting, wondering how you could have forgotten writing all of this. The house is kind that way. It lets you keep just enough awareness to suffer, but not enough to escape. You'll write this same warning again tomorrow, or next week, or next month, whenever you discover the hidden journals again for the first time. Sweet dreams, Maya, or whoever you think you are today. I dropped the notebook and backed away from it, but the words kept appearing. Running won't help. You can't run from yourself. And that's all you are now, a memory of a memory, a ghost haunting your own life. The house has been writing your story for months. You just keep forgetting you're not the author anymore. From somewhere deep in the basement, piano music began to play. Not the haunting classical piece I'd heard before, but something else, a simple, repetitive melody that sounded like a lullaby. I should have closed my eyes and counted to 200. That was Rule 5. But I found myself walking toward the music instead, drawn by its innocent sweetness. I descended the main staircase, crossed the foyer, and approached the basement door. I knocked 3 times and waited 30 seconds, following Rule 3. The music stopped. Maya, came a voice from below my own voice, calling up from the darkness. Maya, is that you? Please come down. I need to show you something important. This was Rule 10. I wasn't supposed to answer when I heard my own voice calling from the basement. But the voice sounded so desperate, so frightened. Who are you? I called back. I'm you, the voice replied. I'm the you from before the house took your memories. I've been trapped down here, trying to find a way to warn you. Please, you have to listen to me. I opened the basement door and peered down into the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, barely visible in the dim light, stood a figure that looked exactly like me. She was wearing the same clothes I'd put on that morning, but they were dirty and torn. Her hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Don't come down, she called up. Just listen. The house has been lying to you about everything. You've been here for months, not days. It keeps resetting your memories, making you live the same discoveries over and over. I know, I said. I found the journals. Those are lies too, she said urgently. The house writes them to make you think you understand what's happening. The truth is worse. The house doesn't just steal memories, it replaces them. Everything you think you remember about your life before coming here is fake. Maya Chen never existed. You're just a construct, a story the house tells itself. I felt the world tilting around me. That's not true. Check your phone, she said. Really look at it. Look at the photos, the contacts, the messages. How many of them feel real to you? How many feel like memories you're borrowing from someone else? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. The photos were there, hundreds of them, spanning years of a life I thought was mine. But now that she mentioned it, they felt strange, distant, like looking at someone else's vacation pictures. The contacts were names I recognized, but couldn't quite place. The text messages were conversations I could read, but not remember having. "You're not Maya Chen," my double said. "You're just the house's latest attempt to create a perfect victim. It built you from pieces of all the people it's consumed over the years, gave you a fake history, fake memories, fake feelings. And now it's slowly taking even those away, piece by piece, just for the pleasure of watching you suffer." I sank to my knees at the top of the stairs. If this was true, then everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. My childhood, my friendships, my dreams, all of it was just borrowed fragments from the house's collection of stolen lives. "But I feel real," I whispered. "Of course you do," she said sadly. "The house is very good at what it does, but feeling real and being real aren't the same thing. I'm what's left of the original you, the first you, the one who walked into this house thinking she was inheriting something wonderful. The house trapped me down here to keep me from interfering with its new toys. How do I know you're telling the truth? Because I know things the house hasn't told you yet," she said. "I know that tomorrow you'll find a family photo you don't remember taking. I know that next week you'll discover a room you've never seen before, full of belongings that feel familiar but wrong. I know that in a month, if you last that long, you'll start hearing voices in the walls, all the versions of yourself that came before." The piano music started again, louder this time, drowning out her words. "Don't listen to it," she shouted over the melody. "The music is how it controls you. It's been playing different songs for each version of you, programming you like a music box dancer." But I was already starting to feel drowsy. The music was so beautiful, so soothing. It reminded me of something, a lullaby my mother used to sing, though I couldn't quite remember her face. "Fight it," my double pleaded. "Don't let it take you back upstairs. Don't let it reset you again." I tried to focus on her words, but the music was overwhelming. It felt like coming home after a long, difficult journey. All I wanted to do was sleep. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure why I was apologizing. "I know," she said, and her voice was already fading. "I'm sorry too, for all of us." I woke up in the master bedroom, sunlight streaming through the windows. According to my phone, it was Thursday morning, October 15th. I felt refreshed and optimistic about my new life in the beautiful house I'd inherited from Great-Aunt Cordelia. I went downstairs and found a journal sitting on the kitchen table, an ornate leather-bound book that must have belonged to my aunt. Inside were 10 rules for the proper management of Blackwood Manor. They seemed eccentric, but harmless, the kind of quirky instructions a rich old woman might leave behind. But as I read them, a strange feeling of déjà vu washed over me. The words felt familiar, as if I'd read them many times before. My hands trembled slightly as I turned the pages, though I couldn't understand why. At the bottom of the first page, in handwriting that looked eerily similar to my own, was a note I didn't remember seeing before. Each broken rule costs a day. The house remembers everything you forget. I stared at those words until they seemed to swim on the page. Why would I have written something like that? When would I have written it? I closed the journal and tried to shake off the strange feeling. It was probably just nerves about the new house, the new life ahead of me. I'd always been prone to anxiety in unfamiliar situations, but as I made breakfast, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was following a script I'd memorized long ago. Every movement felt rehearsed, every decision predetermined. When I reached for the tea tin, I knew exactly which shelf it would be on. When I opened the refrigerator, I wasn't surprised to find it fully stocked with foods I liked, even though I couldn't remember shopping for any of it. Most unsettling of all was the way the house felt around me. Not unfamiliar, as it should have been, but like coming home after a long absence. The floorboards didn't creak underfoot in unexpected places. They creaked exactly where I anticipated they would. The light switches were exactly where my hand reached for them without looking. Even the view from the kitchen window looked like a scene I'd memorized rather than one I was seeing for the first time. I decided to explore the house to dispel these strange feelings, but everywhere I went only intensified the sensation of repetition. In the library, I found myself gravitating toward a specific section, as if guided by muscle memory. In the parlor, I automatically avoided stepping on a particular loose floorboard. In the conservatory, I knew without looking which plants needed water. It was in the music room that I finally stopped pretending everything was normal. The grand piano sat exactly where I expected it to be, its ebony surface reflecting the afternoon light from windows I somehow knew would be positioned just so. But it was the bench that made my breath catch. The leather seat was worn in a specific pattern, as if someone had sat in the same position countless times. And when I lifted the lid, the keys were warm to the touch, as if they'd been recently played. I pressed middle C, and the note rang out clear and true. But instead of fading naturally, it seemed to hang in the air, joined by other notes I wasn't playing. Soon, a full melody was emanating from the piano, though my hands rested motionless in my lap. I should have been terrified. Any rational person would have run. But instead, I found myself humming along with the tune, as if I'd known it all my life. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a lullaby that seemed to reach directly into my soul and stroke away every worry, every question, every doubt. Close your eyes and count to 200, whispered a voice in my head. Don't investigate the music. But why would I count? The music was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I wanted to understand where it was coming from, who was playing it. I wanted to join in. I stood up from the bench and followed the melody as it seemed to move through the house. It led me through the foyer, up the grand staircase, down a hallway I didn't remember exploring before. The music grew louder with each step, more complex, more irresistible. At the end of the hallway was a door I hadn't noticed during my earlier exploration. It was slightly ajar, and golden light spilled through the gap. The music was coming from beyond that door, and with it came the sound of laughter, warm, familiar laughter that made my chest tight with longing. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room beyond was impossible. It stretched far beyond what the house's architecture should have allowed, filled with warm sunlight that came from no visible source. People were gathered throughout the space, dozens of them, all talking and laughing and enjoying what appeared to be some kind of celebration, and I recognized every single face. There was Jessica, my college roommate, wearing the blue dress she'd worn to our graduation. She looked up and waved at me, her smile exactly as bright as I remembered. Near the windows stood my grandmother, who had died when I was 10, looking exactly as she had in my favorite photograph of her. At the piano sat my mother, playing the lullaby she used to sing to me when I was small. "Maya," called a voice, and I turned to see my best friend from high school running toward me. "You made it. We've been waiting for you." I looked around the room in wonder. Everyone I had ever loved, everyone I had ever lost, was here. They all looked exactly as I remembered them in their happiest moments, bathed in that impossible golden light. "But you're all," I started to say. "Dead," my grandmother finished, appearing beside me with the gentle smile I remembered so well. "Oh, sweetheart, death is just another room in the house. We've all been here waiting for you to find us. This can't be real," I whispered. "What's real?" asked my mother, still playing the beautiful melody. "Is real sitting alone in an empty house, or is real being surrounded by everyone who loves you?" I wanted to believe it so badly. The loneliness I'd felt my entire life, the sense that I was always missing something, always searching for something I couldn't name, it all melted away in the warmth of this impossible room. "Stay with us," Jessica said, taking my hand. "You don't have to be alone anymore." But even as she spoke, I noticed something that made my stomach clench with dread. Jessica's hand was cold. Not the normal coolness of someone who'd been outside, but the deep, bone-penetrating cold of something that had never been warm. I looked more carefully at the faces around me. They were all exactly as I remembered them, but they were too perfect. Jessica's smile never wavered, not even slightly. My grandmother's eyes never blinked. My mother played the same 8 bars of melody over and over, her fingers moving in precisely the same pattern each time. And in the golden light that illuminated everything, none of them cast shadows. "You're not real," I said, backing toward the door. The room went silent. Every face turned toward me, and their expressions shifted in perfect unison from joy to something else, something hungry and desperate. "Of course we're real," they said, all speaking in the same voice. a voice that sounded like mine, but echoed from the bottom of a well. "We're as real as you are." The laughter started then, not the warm, familiar laughter I'd heard before, but something harsh and mocking. It came from all of them at once, their mouths opening impossibly wide, their perfect faces distorting into masks of cruel amusement. I ran. I burst through the door and down the hallway, the laughter following me like a physical force. The walls seemed to stretch and warp around me, the distance to the staircase growing longer with each step. Behind me, I could hear footsteps, dozens of them, all perfectly synchronized, getting closer. I reached the staircase and threw myself down it, not caring if I fell. The laughter was right behind me now, and with it came voices calling my name in unison. "Maya, Maya, come back. Don't you want to be with us? Don't you want to stop being alone?" I made it to the foyer and ran for the front door, but when I grasped the handle, it wouldn't turn. The brass was ice cold under my palm, and frost was spreading across the wood in delicate patterns. The laughter stopped abruptly. The house fell silent. I turned around slowly, dreading what I might see. The foyer was empty, but I could feel eyes watching me from every shadow, every corner. The crystal chandelier above me began to sway gently, though there was no breeze. "You can't leave," said a voice from everywhere and nowhere. It was my own voice, but older, sadder. "None of us can leave. This is where stories end, Maya. This is where dreams come to die. I don't belong here," I said to the empty air. "You belong here more than anywhere else," the voice replied. "You belong here because you have nowhere else to go. No one is missing you. No one is looking for you. You are exactly as alone as we are." I felt tears streaming down my face, though I couldn't remember starting to cry. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time someone called to check on you? When was the last time you had plans with a friend? When was the last time you felt truly connected to another human being? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. The terrible truth was that I couldn't remember. My life before the house felt like a collection of borrowed memories, experiences that belonged to someone else. "The house doesn't create loneliness," the voice continued gently. "It simply recognizes it. It calls to people who are already ghosts in their own lives, who are already forgotten by the world. We give you what you've always wanted, a place where you matter, where you're needed, where your story has meaning. By trapping me, by keeping you safe. Outside this house, you're nothing. Inside, you're part of something eternal. Every person who has ever lived here becomes part of the house's story. You'll never be forgotten because you'll never be gone." I sank to my knees on the marble floor. The worst part was that the voice was right. I had been alone, had been invisible, had been living a life that felt borrowed from someone else. At least here, my suffering had purpose. "How many people have you told this to?" I asked. "Everyone who has ever mattered," the voice said. "And they all made the same choice eventually. all stopped fighting and accepted what they were meant to become. Which is what? Happy, the voice said simply. Forever happy, forever together, forever safe from the loneliness of the outside world. I thought about the room full of people I'd loved, all of them perfect and eternal and waiting for me. I thought about never having to worry about rent or jobs or the endless small rejections that made up daily life. I thought about belonging somewhere, finally and completely. And then I thought about Jessica, who had existed for exactly one day before the house erased her. Jessica, who had been real enough to hurt when she was gone. If the house could create such a convincing illusion of the people I'd loved, what did that say about me? Was I just another convincing illusion, another perfectly crafted lie? I want to see the basement, I said. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the voice had abandoned me. Finally, it spoke again, and for the first time, it sounded uncertain. Why? Because that's where the truth is, isn't it? That's where you keep the people you can't quite erase, the ones who remember who they really were. The basement is dangerous, the voice said. The basement is where broken things go. Then that's where I belong. I stood up and walked to the basement door. It stood open, though I was certain I'd closed it earlier. Darkness yawned beyond the threshold, and from somewhere far below came the faint sound of weeping. I knocked 3 times and waited 30 seconds, following the rule I somehow knew by heart. The weeping stopped. Maya, came a voice from below my own voice, but broken and desperate. Maya, is that you? Please come down. I need to show you something important. This was the moment I was supposed to turn away, supposed to follow Rule 10 and never answer when I heard my own voice calling from the basement. But I was tired of following rules I didn't understand, tired of being afraid of myself. I'm coming, I called back. I descended into the darkness. The basement was vast and cold, with stone walls that wept moisture and shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. But it wasn't empty. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I began to make out figures standing throughout the space, dozens of them, all perfectly still, all facing the stairs. They all had my face. Some looked younger, some older. Some were dressed in clothes I recognized, others in styles from different eras. But they were all unmistakably me, or versions of me, each one slightly different from the others. The closest one stepped forward, and I saw that she was wearing the same outfit I'd put on that morning, but it was torn and dirty. Her hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. You came, she said, and her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been screaming. I wasn't sure you would. The house usually stops people before they get this far. Who are you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm you, she said. The first you. The real you. The one who walked into this house 3 days ago thinking she was inheriting something wonderful. She gestured to the other figures standing in the shadows. We're all you. Every time the house resets your memories, every time it makes you forget and start over, a piece of the real you gets trapped down here. Where all the moments of awareness, all the times you figured out the truth before it could stop you. I looked around at the sea of my own faces, each one reflecting a different level of knowledge and despair. How many times? Hundreds, said another version of me, this one wearing a nightgown. Maybe thousands. Time doesn't work properly here. Sometimes you discover the truth quickly. Sometimes it takes weeks. But you always discover it eventually. And when you do, the house resets you and keeps a copy of that awareness down here. Why? Because awareness is the most delicious part, said a third me. This one wearing a business suit I didn't recognize. Fear is just the appetizer. The main course is the moment when you understand exactly what's happening to you and realize you're powerless to stop it. I felt sick. So this is what I really am. Just food for some supernatural parasite. No, said the first me, the one in the torn clothes. You're the bait. The house uses your face, your voice, your identity to call the next victim. When you die, it will wear you like a mask to lure someone else. But I'm not dead. Aren't you? She pointed to something behind me. I turned and saw a figure hanging from the basement ceiling, a noose around her neck, her face blue and swollen. She was wearing the same clothes I was wearing, had the same hair, the same face. It was me. I was looking at my own corpse. You killed yourself 3 months ago, the first me said gently. The loneliness, the isolation, the gradual erasure of everything that made you who you were, it became too much. You couldn't take another reset, another cycle of forgetting and remembering. I stared at my own dead face, unable to process what I was seeing. But I'm here. I'm talking to you. You're a ghost, she said. A very convincing ghost that doesn't know it's dead. The house has been puppeting your corpse, using your memories and personality to keep the charade going. Every time you think you're discovering the truth for the first time, you're just following a script written in your own blood. The room seemed to spin around me. No, that's impossible. I can feel things. I can think. I can make choices. Can you? Asked another me. Or are you just following the pattern the house laid out for you? Have you made a single decision that surprised you? Have you done anything that didn't feel exactly like something you'd already done before? I thought back over the past few days, or what I remembered of them. Every decision had felt inevitable, every discovery preordained. I hadn't been living my life, I'd been remembering it. The house doesn't just collect people, the first me continued. It collects stories. Your story, specifically, the story of a lonely woman who inherits a mysterious house and slowly discovers its terrible secret. It makes you live that story over and over, each time thinking it's the first time, because that story is what feeds it. How do I stop it? You can't, said all the versions of me in unison. You're dead. You've been dead for months. The only thing left is to accept it, and hope that whatever comes next is kinder than this. I looked around at all the versions of myself, all the moments of terrible awareness trapped forever in this basement purgatory. Each one reflected a different stage of understanding, a different level of despair. Some were crying. Others had the hollow-eyed stare of people who had moved beyond crying into something deeper and more final. "Is this hell?" I asked. "No," said the first me. "Hell would be more honest." From somewhere above us came the sound of a car engine, then footsteps on the front porch, a knock at the door, the sound of keys turning in the lock. "The next one," whispered the versions of me. "The house is calling the next one." I could hear my own voice from upstairs, bright and welcoming, playing the role of the lawyer who would explain the inheritance, who would hand over the journal of rules, who would set the whole cycle in motion again. "I have to warn them," I said, starting toward the stairs. "You can't," said all my selves together. "You're not allowed upstairs anymore. You're just a memory now, a ghost haunting your own story. The house will use your face and your voice, but it won't be you doing the using." I tried to climb the stairs anyway, but my feet passed through them like mist. I was incorporeal, insubstantial, a shadow cast by a person who no longer existed. From upstairs came the sound of my own laughter, bright and false, as I welcomed another victim into Blackwood Manor. I pressed my hands to my ears, but I couldn't block out the sound of my own voice, explaining the rules, my own mouth speaking the words that would doom another soul to the same fate I'd suffered. "How many?" I asked the darkness. "How many what?" replied the chorus of myselves. "How many people has the house killed wearing my face?" The silence that followed was answer enough. I sank to the cold stone floor of the basement, surrounded by all the versions of myself that had died over and over again. Above us, my voice continued to play its part in the house's eternal performance, welcoming the next victim, explaining the rules, setting the trap. And somewhere in the walls around us, I could hear the house humming contentedly, like a satisfied predator digesting its latest meal while already preparing for the next. The story would continue. It would always continue. The house would wear my face and speak with my voice until the end of time, calling to lonely people, offering them everything they'd ever wanted, and giving them exactly what they deserved. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what it had felt like to be alive, but even that was fading now. Soon, I would be nothing but another ghost in the walls, another voice calling from the basement, another warning that no one would heed. The house always won. It always had. It always would.